Hello, crafty friends, and welcome to my channel, Create with Kalia. I'm Kalia. Today I'm going to be creating a two-page layout featuring these photographs. The photo on the far left is approximately 3.5 by 3.5. This picture is 3.5 by 5, and these two smaller pictures are approximately 2.5 by 3 3/4. I'm going to bring in two 6 by 8 pieces of cardstock and the Snowy Wonder stamp set. I'm not actually going to use the stamp set, but I am going to use the dies from Snowy Wonder for this layout. This layout is going to be days 7 and 8 of my Days of December scrapbook that I've been working on. If you've missed the other days of this series, make sure to check them out in the playlist that will be at the end of this video. The photo that I'm working with for this layout is from an event that was held at our public library. They offered cocoa and cookies and had these plastic bubble domes located outside on the patio where one could enjoy their treats. Ever since we attended this event, I knew I wanted to use the snow globe dies from the Snowy Wonder set to make a shaker element for this scrapbook page. As you can see, I've used the snow globe die to cut around my photograph to get the elements that I really wanted. I then used the Spotlight on Nature dies to cut out a circle that is an appropriate size to make my shaker. Now I'm using the snow globe once again to cut the circle out of the center of my gold foil paper so that my photograph shows through. As you can see, this fits perfectly. I've also used the die cut for the base of the snow globe to cut some garden green glimmer paper to use to assemble my shaker element. I really like the way that this looks. I do test it out to see whether or not I prefer the base to be behind or on top of the gold foil paper. I do decide that I prefer it on the top. Next, I used the same Spotlight on Nature die to try to cut out my acetate. However, after running the acetate through my die cutter twice, it didn't cut cleanly through the acetate, so I use a pair of scissors to cut around the impression that I've made. In order to assemble my shaker card, I then make sure to peel off the protective coating on the one side of the acetate. I'm using a liquid glue, art glitter glue, in order to assemble my shaker element. Liquid glue is going to give me a little bit better hold and gives me the opportunity to shift the acetate around to get it right into the correct spot so that none of the edges are showing past the sides of the gold foil paper. Now I'm cutting small pieces off of a roll of 3D foam tape. I'm cutting the small chunks off because that allows me to go around the curve of the snow globe in order to completely seal my shaker element so that none of the items that I use in the shaker will fall out. I am able to use one big piece at the bottom. I like the way that that looks, so now I'm going to dry fit the snow globe onto my scrapbook page. I'm moving things around to see where I want the snow globe slash shaker element to actually sit on the page and what embellishment I might be using. I knew when I started this project that my primary focus was going to be the shaker element, and beyond that, I wasn't sure what papers I wanted to use. I have been using the Reindeer Memories DSP in the rest of the layouts that I've completed so far for this album, so that's the first papers that I look at. I tried out nearly all of the papers in the DSP set, as you can see here, but most of them just felt too busy for me. In the end, I ended up going with the plaid DSP because it was a little less busy than the other papers, and it just went the best with the photos that I'm using and the embellishments that I was considering for these pages. Next, I cut a 2.5-inch piece of Granny Apple Green cardstock. I wanted to bring in something to my scrapbook page that made the snow globe look like it was resting on a shelf. I realized that 2.5 inches was too wide for the original piece that I cut, so I recut the Granny Apple Green at 1.5 inches, and that looks much better to me. The plaid paper has been cut at 2 inches, and then I also cut a piece of garden green glimmer paper, a quarter of an inch wide, and used that as a transition between my white cardstock and the plaid paper. I really like how this is starting to come together, and the fact that I now have a shelf for the snow globe shaker element to rest on. I use the gold to figure out where I want to actually place the photograph so that I can build up my shaker card directly on my page. I place my photo down, make sure to protect it, and then make sure to that it's adhered well to my scrapbook page. I'm going to start building up the shaker directly on my page. The first element I bring in for my shaker are some gold stars from the A Little Bit Festive kit. This kit was available over the winter and included some die cut sheets. I'm also bringing in assorted sequins that were from close to my heart. There's stars, there's sequins, and there's a variety of different colors and textures that are all silvers and iridescent and clear. And so I thought that those would work well in my shaker card. I've also brought in white loose snowflakes from Stampin' Up! To be part of the shaker element. When I'm adding elements into a shaker, I want to make sure I have enough to keep it visually interesting, but I also don't want so much that it detracts from the picture or that I can't end up seeing the picture that's behind all of the shaker stuff. I do have to move things around and shake this around for a little bit to kind of get things unstuck before it really starts working the way that I want it to. I'm happy with how much I've added, and so I remove the backing from all of the foam tape. Make sure I wipe any dust and debris off of the acetate, and then I'm ready to attach that down to my page and finish creating my shaker. I add the base piece to the snow globe, and then I start looking at some additional embellishments. I felt like the banner needed some additional weight to it, and so I found this red sticker from the Reindeer Memories scrapbooking sticker sheet, and really like the way that that looks right underneath the Granny Apple Green. I've also found the package of gifts from the A Little Bit Festive die cut sheet, and like the way that that looks. The colors really seem to go well with the paper that I've chosen. This ribbon also comes from the A Little Bit Festive pack. It was a little too big, and so I cut off one side and then re-dovetailed it, and now it fits perfectly on top of my shaker. I also use the fact that the ribbon hangs down a little bit to cover up the face from a stranger who was in our picture and make her a little less noticeable in the picture. I've brought in a red sticker that says family time that was also found on the Reindeer Memories Scrapbooking Workshop sticker sheet. I used some Granny Apple Green to dovetail another small piece of cardstock and put that behind the sticker. When I'm grouping things like this, I often like to group two elements together, which creates a little bit more visual interest with a banner element. When I'm using items that have been dovetailed and I'm overlapping them with other elements, I like to make sure that I overlap about halfway between the outermost and innermost point of the dovetail. That to me is what looks the most aesthetically pleasing. As you can see, I've also found some adhesive-backed snowflakes that I've attached to the left-hand side of my page by the banners and to the bottom right-hand side of my page. Stay tuned because some of those will move. Next, I've started on the right-hand page of my layout. I've replicated what I already had done on the left-hand side. The plaid piece of DSP on this side has been cut down to 2.5 inches though. I've cut my photograph to 4 by 4 so that I can put a 4 by 4 flip flap on this side of the layout. You can see that I'm deciding which way I want the flip flap to open. I do decide that I want it to open up towards the top of the page. As the top photo is slightly smaller than 4 by 4, I do use some more of the gold foil paper to back that. You can see that I cut out a 4 by 4 square of the gold foil paper and then gutted that so that I could save the inner part for another project. I've also cut a piece of garden green two-tone cardstock, and I'm going to put that on the back of the 4 by 4 photo. so that I can add an additional photo into that spot. I've brought in some pocket cards from the Reindeer Memories and More card pack, and am really liking the way that this holly pocket card gives some additional interest to the page that I'm creating. I realize here that I want to put another one of the pocket cards behind the photo of my two boys to help give the inner area of my flip flap some additional visual interest and so that it matches the photo that it will be facing. I try a couple of different pocket cards just to see if there's any other options that I like, but I continue to go back to the holly. So that's the card that I'm going to use for this layout. I'm going to put that onto the back of the garden green cardstock and then put the photo on top so that the holly shows through around the edges of the photo. I'll do that to both pieces of the garden green cardstock, and then I'll adhere my photos back on top of the pocket cards. If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to like and subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss any of the upcoming layouts that I'll be doing for this Days of December album, or any of the other upcoming projects that I have. If you happen to notice the mistake that I just made, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'd like to see how many people caught it. And if you need to, you can always rewind and 0.25 to see if you can catch it. Now I'm going to make sure that I like the placement of my flip flap, and then I'm going to put the bottom piece of the layers that I'm building onto the scrapbook page. I'm going to use my T-square ruler to make sure that I have the 4x4 piece of garden green cardstock in the correct place and exactly halfway across the page. I want the 4x4 area to be at the same level as the shaker element on the opposite page because I feel like that's what will make the layout cohesive. I bring in the left-hand page of my layout just to make sure that I like where the 4x4 piece of cardstock is, and yep, that looks good to me, so I'm going to make sure I adhere it all the way down. Next, I'm going to take one of the holly leaf pocket cards and put that onto the piece of garden green cardstock, and then I'm ready to add my photo to the bottom layer of this stack. If you're not familiar with how to use flip flaps, they are a wonderful way to add some additional embellishments and movement to your scrapbook layouts. A flip flap is basically a mini page protector and has a flap that has a very strong adhesive on it so that you can adhere it to either your scrapbook page or to the page protector for your layout. There's a couple of different ways to attach them to your pages, and for the purposes of this album, I will be attaching the flip flap to the outside of the page protector. I've brought in my adhesive-backed snowflake assortment again and have started adding some additional snowflakes to this layout. However, ultimately, I realized that I don't like the placement of any of the snowflakes and I do end up moving them. I found this Ho 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 sticker on the Reindeer Memories and More scrapbooking workshop sticker sheet, and I've added that to the bottom of my photo with my son sitting on Santa's lap. I think that that's just a perfect little embellishment for this page. I'm bringing back in a little bit festive die cuts to embellish the right-hand side of my page. Embellishing my pages is usually the longest step of putting together a scrapbook layout because I just can't make up my mind. I really like this cup of cocoa, but when I put the flip flap back on top, I realized that it's almost entirely covered, and I don't want that. If you didn't catch the mistake from earlier, it's that I put the photo of my two boys upside down into the flip flap. You need to make sure that when you're creating a flip flap that opens upwards, that the photo on the one side is upside down from the photo on the other so that the orientation is correct. I decided to use the two ornament die cuts on my right-hand page to embellish and also moved the snowflakes to around the banner area, removed the ones that were lower by the snow globe, and also moved the two snowflakes that I had put near the top of the right-hand page. That made my page feel a little less busy to me. I also added journaling that I printed off on my home printer. And now my layout is complete. I really like the way that the shaker element works on this layout and that the flip flap gave me room for some additional pictures on this 6x8 layout. I'll be adhering the flip flap to the outside of the page protector once I add this page to my album. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day and craft on.